Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome everyone to the Ummahpreneur live podcast, where I interview Muslim entrepreneurs and I bring you people from all walks of life to share with you their stories, their journeys through entrepreneurship. And today with me, I have none other than brother Badees Nouiouat. I hope I pronounced that right, brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalam.
How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you, brother. And it's really interesting how we actually met and how I discovered your work was when you actually shared your most recent book that you just wrote. And I'll give people a background of what it is that you do. So Brother Badees is the founder of the Irving Muslim, which is a community-run newsletter, as well as Ihsan Company. And this is an apparel company that focuses on Islamic clothing and has celebrities like Khabib Nurmagomedov, if you guys know UFC or MMA, who was actually wearing one of their t-shirts, which is really cool, mashallah. And most recently, which is also the reason why I wanted to bring him on, was he authored a book titled The Adventures of Nur-Al-Din. And this follows the story of a young Tunisian man named Farid who embarks on a journey and experiences firsthand the importance of loyalty, courage, and most of all, his faith, which is Islam, right? So beautiful, beautiful book, mashallah, that I want to highlight and I want to talk about today as well, and your journey writing this book and just your journey as an entrepreneur. So I'm really excited to do this. Bismillah.
Jazakallah khair for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, bro. So if you'd allow me, actually, I would love to, I don't usually do this on these podcasts, but I thought it would be fun to do it today. And what I would love to do is I would love to read a quick little excerpt of your book. So okay. I'd actually love to read a few lines, a few pages here, just to give people a taste of this book and what's inside and how well written it is. So is that okay? Do I have your permission to do so?
Yes, of course, yes.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Bismillah. So I'm going to read you guys an excerpt of this book. So I'm not going to start at page 1. I'm going to start right in the middle of the story, or in the beginning of the story, but not at the very beginning, and give you guys a little excerpt that I personally really enjoyed, to give you a taste of what you can find in this book, and definitely one that you should check out, and it is available on Amazon right now, and I believe Kindle version as well, The Adventures of Nur-Al-Din. So let's begin. So, Bismillah. Let's go ahead and pull up the page here. All right. So, after a couple of hours, Farid was finally getting the hang of things. The goal, Khalid said, was to make the sword feel like an extension of your arm. When you build the motions into your muscle memory, you will become much more effective in battle. By the evening, the crew got together for Maghrib prayer and dinner in the kitchen. Khidr and Aruj gathered everyone and ushered people to complete their wudu for prayer. Do you know the adhan? Aruj asked Farid. Yes, Captain. Great, go ahead and perform it. The direction is that way. And he pointed toward the corner behind Farid's left shoulder. Farid turned to the Qibla and took a deep breath. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And some people began murmuring behind Farid as he continued the adhan. When he finished, he turned to see a bald, red-faced man inches from his face. You made the adhan wrong, he accused. You only said Allahu Akbar twice in the beginning. And Farid turns around. That's what I learned from my mother. She studied under scholars in Kairouan, Farid said, intimidated. Arush stepped in. Brother, there are different ways to do things that are accepted by the scholars. Farid here studied under the Maliki madhab, whereas many of us come from the Hanafi madhab in the East. There's no need to make these accusations. Rather, we must learn from and respect each other. My apologies, Captain. I thought there was only one right way of doing the adhan. I have not learned about the Maliki madhab, the man said to Farid. No problem, brother, Farid said. We are all united under Islam. Farid realized that many of the crew members had come with Khidr and Aruj from Ottoman lands, from places like Istanbul and Damascus. He saw it as an opportunity to absorb the various cultures and languages that he heard among his crewmates. With the conflict resolved, Khidr readied the men for prayer, and Aruj stepped forward to lead as the imam. After they completed the prayer, Aruj stood and gave a quick Islamic reminder. Remember the rules of war. 1 second, I actually just lost my page. So let me pull that back up, guys. I don't know why I just lost it. So he says, remember the rules of war. And let me pull this up because this is the part that I want to highlight, guys. And I just lost my page, subhanAllah. Give me 1 second. I'm going to find it. All right, Bismillah. So we're back at it. So he looks at him and he says, remember the rules of war. Aruj emphasized, do not attack women and children. Do not kill livestock and burn crops unless it is an absolute need. Finally, do not attack monks and ascetics. Leave them to practice their faith. Are we clear? I captain the crew Balud, and this chapter. So I wanted to highlight this little quick excerpt, mashallah, of this book, The Adventures of Nur-Al-Din. And from what I read here, which is, I would think, not even 1 or 2 pages, but you can very clearly see how you've incorporated the teachings of Islam in this book, and incorporated, educational material that, young adults and children, and even us as, grown adults can learn from and remember, right? The rules of war, and even, that there are different madhabs in Islam, and there's still there are different ways of doing the adhan, and all these beautiful concepts. So, mashallah, I really love what I read so far, and I definitely encourage you guys to check it out. Brother, what do you think of this excerpt? And tell me, what was, your thought process writing this book? What were you thinking of when you were writing this, and for who did you write this book?
Yeah, thank you for reading a passage from the book. It's really cool to hear someone else read it, I just started writing this book in late January. I was in my last semester of college, or about to begin the last semester of college. And I had been writing for 2-3 years. I was, with the Irving Muslim, I was writing articles, and also for other outlets in the local DFW area. Okay. And I felt that I wanted to take the next step, and I was like, I want to write a book. And so I started to think, what do I want to write about? Who do I want to write about? And the second question came easy to me. My 4 younger brothers. I've read a lot of books in my youth, and I see my brothers also doing the same. They really love to read. And I realized that in my youth, I didn't have any books where I felt like a representation of Islam. Although, there's so many exciting books out there, but there's nothing where we can read it and feel like, oh, that's my culture, that's my religion. And I wanted to change that, because my brothers are still in that same stage where they're still reading and growing. And so if I can put something out there while they're in this stage to give them that feeling, then that was my goal. Of course, I was going to self-publish it on Amazon, but I was not really thinking, I was not really expecting many people to read it. My dua when writing this book was, if just one person, benefits from it and feels closer to Allah because of the words I wrote, then I'm satisfied. And I hope that is achieved. So, I really wanted to impress upon the young readers these messages of unity, a positive reinforcement of their beliefs and their culture and their religion. But one of the major things, like in this passage, as you read, is just that unity, from the part where they say, we're all united under Islam. Because in this day and age, we see, I'm an avid reader of international news from a young age, and there's so many conflicts, there's so many wars, and when you go into it, you just see like so much dysfunction. You see so much people fighting each other, and you don't even know why. And so if we can find a way to teach the next generation that, just because we have these small differences, that doesn't mean that we have to, fight each other and go to war against each other. And I know that there's a lot of problems caused by imperialism and by colonization, which I also go through and study in this book. But I think that it also needs to come from us, where we accept each other for our differences and just unite with each other, because if we're united, then no one can take us down.
Definitely, bro. And that's a beautiful, beautiful mission that you were trying to accomplish with this book, mashallah. And, to kind of zoom out of that and actually understand a bit more of your background and how you got to this point where you've now written this book and what you're doing currently. If we could just start right at the beginning, and you can share with me, because you have a history of entrepreneurship, and you have a history of starting businesses, and you founded the Irving Muslim and your clothing line. So I want to know, what was the first business that you ever started? Can you share with me the journey that inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I don't have a story of being a child selling lemonade, but I think, Ihsan Company was, I would say, my first business, and that was just 3 years ago. Okay. And the reason that I started that business wasn't really just a hunger for entrepreneurship, but it was just something that I wanted to create, and I had a mission that I wanted to achieve. And I think everything that I've done so far is just that. It starts with that. It just starts with seeing something that I want and seeing that it's not being done yet, and so I just go ahead and do it. And so with the Ihsan Company, the reason that I started was when I was in high school. I started the Muslim Student Association at my public high school with a few friends, and at the end of the year, the first year, we had a decent amount of people, maybe 20, 30 people coming to Jummah, coming to events. And so at the end of the year, one of the people who was attending our group suggested making merchandise. And I said, sure, why not? Every other group makes merchandise. So we went ahead, we started looking for ideas. I went on this website called Custom Inc.
Okay.
One of the more popular websites for printing merchandise. And they have a really good tool on their website where you can like add art and add text and, move it around. So this was just some experimentation that I was doing. And we came out with a shirt at the end of the year. And so this shirt became one of my favorite shirts because it had an Islamic message on it. And not only did I think so, but a lot of people who bought the shirt also said the same thing to me. Like, I love wearing this shirt because there was a quote on the back of the shirt of what's it called? A hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Can you mind sharing with us what that quote was?
I'd have to go back and look for it. I think it's like, be for the truth, even if it's against yourself. And so a lot of people just really loved being able to carry that message with them. Even they didn't have to do anything. All they have to do is put on a shirt, and everywhere they go to Walmart, they go to school, they go to soccer practice, but that shirt, that message is being shared, and they don't have to do anything. Like, they don't have to go and give the dawah physically. All they have to do is wear the shirt, and it performs as dawah for them. And so that was really powerful for me and a lot of people. And a couple years after that was when I had the realization that I want more shirts like this. And so I just started going back into that custom ink. I found my old designs from high school still on there, and I started making new designs. And I made like 4 or 5 designs. And then I just went to a few friends. It's always good to make shura, have a good few friends that you trust their advice. They have diverse perspectives, they have diverse backgrounds, and you get a really well-rounded suggestion, So I went to some of my friends and I showed them these 4 or 5 designs, and I said, okay guys, vote for which one you like. And so the top one that I got was the Salah design. If you saw on my website, or the one that Khabib wore, it was a Salah design. It says, it shows each position of prayer, and then it says Salah under that. So it's a very simple design, but it's definitely impactful. Just from me wearing it, I've had so many people ask me questions, what is that? And I tell them, oh, this is Salah, this is how we pray in Islam. These are the different positions, and they learn something, and they're inspired to, to just think about Allah, think about God, think about prayer. Even if they just think about that, then that's an achievement. So
that's beautiful.
Thank you. So this design won out of my friends, and so I spent maybe like a few $100s, which is half of my savings at the time, to make 50 shirts, just 50 shirts, because I didn't know how much would sell. And within a couple of weeks, I finished those 50 shirts, and then I went back and made 100 shirts, and it just kept growing from there. And one of the things that helped me, the catalyst at the beginning, was I got very lucky with not UFC fighter Khabib, but UFC fighter Zabit Magomed, who's from the same town as Khabib. So what happened was, he was fighting in Dallas. He had a fight scheduled in Dallas, and I basically just like cold messaged him on Instagram. And fighters usually come a few days before. They have to get in the right physical standpoint. They have to eat good. You don't want to fight with jet lag. So he's coming from Russia. Obviously he needs a few days to get into the swing of things here.
Mhm.
So I thought that he would be doing that, and so I reached out to him because he's also, he's coming from Russia. He doesn't know anybody here. He's probably just going to be sitting in his hotel. So I crafted a message, and I said, "Hey, Zabit, assalamu alaikum. Do you want to visit the masjid while you're here? I can take you to one of the biggest masajid in this area." And then basically he left me on red. I saw like scene, 10:54 p.m. And then so I was like, oh damn, he doesn't want to come. And then after like a few seconds, another realization came to me, and I said, oh, what if he doesn't understand English? So I took that same message, I threw it in Google Translate to Russian, and I sent it back to him, and I waited. I was just staring at my phone, and then I see him typing, and then he was like, yes, and then he said, masjid, and he did the emoji like this, this emoji?
Yes.
He said, yes, masjid, and then he did this emoji. And then I was like, oh, and then I was like, okay, when can I get you? And he was like, come now. So I literally just drove over, and I went to this hotel. He gave me the address of his hotel, and he had his coach and a fellow fighter who was his good friend with him. So I was just driving back to my masjid with 3 Russian fighters I didn't know how to talk with in the back seat, and it was interesting because they knew no English, like maybe 2 words, and I knew no
Really?
Russian. They thought I knew Russian because of the message I sent, but it was just Google Translate.
Right.
So
how did you overcome that language barrier?
yeah, so honestly, we were communicating with like grunts and stuff.
Mashallah,
But,
amazing.
so yeah, basically we got to the masjid. I told some of my friends, tell everyone to come meet the guests. We got to the masjid. We got a little early before Maghrib. We sat in the musalla. We just sat down quietly. We're just like reflecting. Not much to talk about when you can't communicate, but it was nice. And then after the prayer, I went over to the microphone and I said, I told the community we have some guests here. Russian UFC fighter. He's fighting soon. Make dua for his fight. And then I brought him up with me, and everyone was like, making dua for him, taking pictures, saying salam. And I think they really were surprised, like, with the amount of Muslims. And a lot of people from other countries don't think that Islam really exists in America. They're like, yeah, there's Muslims, but like, they're all liberals or something. They don't. They're not really practicing. But when they come here and they see the level of commitment in our communities, then they're like, wow, Islam is thriving here in America. So I think that did shock them a little bit, and they're just a happy realization that there's a lot of Muslims here. There's a good community here. They were happy, and they messaged me later that they had a good time. I took them back to their hotel after, and Zabit won the fight. So we were all happy about that.
Amazing.
And so that gave me a very strong boost in the beginning, because I was getting orders from like immediately international orders, because I gave the shirt to Zabit at the masjid while we were there. Him and his coach and his friend, I gave them all shirts, and we took some pictures, and I posted it on my social media. It's one of the first posts on the Ihsan Company Instagram. And so immediately after that post, a lot of attention came from people who were trying to order from Russia, from different countries in Europe. So it became, it was a good boost in the beginning. And then later, for the Khabib story, that was even more lucky, because that, it's just something that happened. I wouldn't say like I never even talked to Khabib. He just ended up wearing my shirt. So the way it happened was, it was right before the Conor fight. So this is one of his most hyped up fights of all time. And everybody's talking about it. The media is talking about it. The ESPN is doing exclusive interviews with Khabib. Conor is, he was being rude to Khabib, his family, his religion, everything. So we had so much build up to this fight. And at the right before, maybe a week before the fight, I knew that Khabib was. I was messaging him, trying to cold message him, email his team, email his his teammates, his coaches. I was trying everything. And so I didn't get anywhere. So I decided that I was going to ship a shirt to his MMA gym in San Jose and just see if he wears it. So I packaged a little note. I packaged a shirt. I found the address of his gym where he works out at when he's in America. It's in San Jose, California. And I just shipped it and waited, hopefully. And so I was looking on his social media, like probably every day, checking if he, was wearing it or anything. And then I see these pictures and videos start to, flood social media, because there was this group of people they named themselves Khabib's Army. They were like young Muslim guys in the San Jose area. And they basically all came to his gym, and just like, right before the Conor fight, they were just like hyping him up. They were like celebrating. They were like telling him, taking pictures. And so in all these pictures and videos that were being posted on social media, Khabib was wearing the t-shirt. So each person that posted a picture with Khabib was, getting me free publicity, technically. Then after that, I was like, oh, he's just, he just decided to wear the shirt on his own. That's cool. And then after that, in an ESPN interview, he was also wearing the t-shirt. And they even showed a little clip. I don't know how they got it, but they showed a clip of him unwrapping the package I sent and taking the shirt out of the package and going like this, and then putting it on. So in this whole process, I didn't talk to him once, but it just happened. I just decided to take the risk, and I think, what's the risk? It's just a free t-shirt, which if he didn't get it, I lost some money on shipping and the t-shirt cost. But the upside was a lot if he wore it. And so it worked. And, that gave me a huge bump in publicity as well. And I was able to get a lot of orders internationally. And alhamdulillah, it just happens. I think a lot of times you just have to just try things, and, don't get your hopes up too much, because then you're going to get crushed if it doesn't happen. But just, try things in different places and just see what works. And I think that's how a lot of this stuff happened for me. Like, I'm not a master planner or master marketer or anything, or PR specialist.
Right.
Just selling t-shirts out of my car or at the masjid, and then this just happens because,
SubhanAllah. Well, there's one thing I want to highlight, because you mentioned that, number one, really amazing story, but you mentioned both times that, I got lucky, but I don't believe that there's any luck involved, because you clearly took action and you took the right steps to make this happen. And this is what people fail to understand who are interested in entrepreneurship or aspiring entrepreneurs. It's that, a lot of times we hear the stories and we think, that person had a lucky break. That person got featured by this celebrity or by this influencer, but you clearly put in the work to actually find creative ways to connect with Khabib and with, these fighters and the Zabit as well. And then, give them your product. And actually you took the time to be like, hey, I studied and I saw that you're going to be in town on this day. Let me go out and actually, have you experience what Dallas looks like, right? So, and come to the masjid. So subhanAllah, I mean, are people willing to go that far? Are they willing to, take the time to go and, pick them up and take them to the masjid, and then, give them a free t-shirt. And then next thing you know, that actually helps grow your business. And that's what people don't understand is, having influencers and people who are following, where your product or endorse you is so huge, right? Mm-hmm. It's so huge in business. It's such a great way to propel business growth. And when you have influencers feature you and vouch for you, it really just helps you kind of step up really quick, which is what happened to you, mashallah, right? And starting to get orders from Europe and everywhere else. So I know you mentioned lucky. I know you mentioned luck, but I don't think there is any luck involved, brother. I think this was all very much thanks to your effort and thanks to the work that you put in, right? And that's definitely not to be downplayed, because I want the people listening to this, whether they're entrepreneurs, business owners, to hear this and be like, wow, what could I possibly do, within my industry, within my niche to make these kind of things happen, right? Yeah. And who do I respect? Who do I admire? Who do I follow? And how can I connect with them in a way and give them my product or service and have them vouch for it, right?
Yeah.
And subhanAllah, when you do that, sometimes they actually reciprocate, and they're like, you know what, I appreciate you taking the time to show me around your masjid or to send me your t-shirt, and let me showcase it, mashallah. So definitely a beautiful thing there. Did you want to add on to that? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I agree. I think just an example is I've had a few other UFC fighters and people wear the shirt, like Eddie from the Dean Show and some other influencers. And I agree with your point, because now that I think about it, maybe 5 out of 100 people respond to my messages, my cold emails, my cold messages. So it does take a lot of effort, and you will strike sometimes. But the fact is that you have to put in that initial effort. Nothing will happen if you don't put yourself out there and just try some things. You can't expect that like Khabib is just gonna buy my shirt online and wear it. You have to just be a little crafty, and in the beginning when you're small, no one cares about you, of course.
Sure.
So you really do have to put yourself out there. But I'm just grateful that some people that I really respect, like Khabib and Zabit and Eddie, have worn the shirt. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, that's awesome, bro. That's really, really beautiful. And there's a good message behind it, right? So that's also a bonus, is that, inshallah, you're getting good deeds for everyone that does witness this shirt and that you've put it together and manufactured it, because they, as you mentioned, if they're a Muslim, they're reminded of Salah, and if they're not Muslim, they might be curious about it and research about it, and that's always a good thing. What do you believe are the top? Because you right now, you're talking about cold messaging and cold emailing, and things that, for me, it's like, yes, like we're on the same level, but for some other people listening to this, they might, they hear these terms like, should I and do I, and they don't put the work in. Let's be honest, they don't put the work in. So what are the top 3 skills that you believe every entrepreneur needs to have if they want to be successful in business? What are skills that have benefited you in your journey?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is self-motivation, because when it's your business, no one's going to work for you. No one's going to tell you, yeah, you're doing a great job. Well, it maybe sound like your family and friends, but in general, the person that wants success most should be you. And you need to be able to tell yourself, I want this. And not just that, but start with a real motivation, like a real solid reason why you are doing this business. If it's just to make money, then when you're not making money, you're going to quit. If it's just to become famous, then when you don't see any level of fame, you're going to quit. So you need a solid reason why you're doing something. So with the Ihsan Company, I want to make shirts that do da'wah on our behalf. With the Irving Muslim, which was a newspaper that I started in my community, like a physical newspaper. The reason I started it was because there was a lot of negative publicity, like specifically in my area, in my community, in the news, and I wanted to counteract that. So I started writing articles, started passing out newspapers, and in each article, the first edition, I wrote all the articles in an 8-page newspaper, and each one was highlighting something good that someone in the community was doing, or a good thing that happened. And I think that when we are always hearing bad news and bad things, it affects everybody in the community. And I saw how we were we're all in a depressed stage where we keep getting battered by these bad developments, bad news, where we'll never, you're never gonna see good things happen when you're always surrounded by bad things, because no one's motivated to do a good thing. So I wanted to highlight those people, tell them that we're watching, keep doing what you're doing, and just in general, lighten the mood. So alhamdulillah, that was it. That was started in a very dark stage, but I think our community has stepped up and is in a good spot right now. Alhamdulillah. I don't want to go too in depth because it was, it's just some things that happen in our community. Very sad things, but alhamdulillah, we're in a very good, much better spot now. So each thing that we do, we should start with a very strong motivation. And if you can tie it to your Islam, to your religion, it's going to be 100 times stronger than anything else. because you're going to be inspired to ask Allah for help much more, because you know that you're doing this partly or mostly on behalf of Allah and trying to use your position on this earth in a good way. And so when you have that tied to your mission, you're going to be much stronger. And you can tie anything to your Islam. It doesn't have to be very specifically like a Muslim nonprofit or something. It can be just you want to create jobs in your community to help people feed their families and raise their kids, or take care of their elderly parents. Just as simple as that. If you can tie your mission to that, then in all the hard times of your business, when you're feeling you're not seeing much success, you're struggling, you're in a tight spot, it's very easy to quit. But you're going to remind yourself of, why am I doing this? And sometimes you even lose motivation, and that's when you need to go back to your original. You should write down that motivation somewhere, so you can go back and like have a journal where I write down my motivation for whatever I do. So when you're in that tight spot, when you're saying like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, I don't know if this is successful, if this is going anywhere, you go back to that and you read what you told yourself, whenever you started that business. And that's your purest, sincerest intention when you wrote that. And you remind yourself of why you wanted to do what you're doing. And so once you read that, then you're like, okay, now time to get back in the lab, time to go back to work. It'll put you back in the right mood. And if you decide you don't want to continue with a business, then that's fine. But it should not be out of just like a weakness of, things are hard. It should be out of you're pivoting, you want to go in another direction, you want to, start a new, go in a new space. That's, completely fine.
I get it, definitely. So I really like that you said that, and self-motivation is huge because, what you mentioned resonates with me, and I can right now think of, so many entrepreneurs that I work with and that I speak to on a daily basis that face this issue, right, of that consistency when it comes to working on your business. And it's so important, right, to work consistently on your business. And only when you have a clear purpose behind what it is that you're doing can you bring that level of consistency and effort and hard work every single day. And so finding that why, right? And as you mentioned as well, finding a purpose behind what it is that you do. And if it's also even connected to Islam, then even better, because you can, as you mentioned, work towards that, knowing that you're working towards something to hopefully please Allah as well, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that hopefully will encourage you to push harder and to push further. And to drive forward to the success of your business. I want to ask you about the community newsletter that you created, because as you mentioned, you created this in a time where you felt like the community was in a bad place, or that at least there wasn't any positive reinforcement and positive news and something to highlight the actual achievements of the community present. And so you decided to you decided to create a newsletter for this community. So what was your thinking behind that? Because that's a pretty big endeavor. And how did you go about distributing it to the people around you? So walk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah, so I was also in the newspaper club in high school. And so I had some experience writing, short form articles. And I remember the tool that we used for creating that newspaper and printing it. And it's a very simple tool. You just input your text and it will print the newspapers and ship it directly to you. So all I needed to was create content. And so I went to work. I did some interviews. I've tried to find out what was happening in the community. One of the best things that I did for that newspaper that I'm really happy about was this monthly spotlight, which was the back page of the newspaper. And so for the monthly spotlight, I chose one figure in the community and just really went in depth on their background and their story and what they do for the community. I feel like a lot of times we don't know like the story of people. We see their face every day, or as much as we go to the masjid, but we don't know really where they came from, who they are, especially immigrants. A lot of times we just know them as when they started coming to the community. We don't know their story back home. So, and I wanted to humanize these people. So I went in and just interviewed them and told their stories to the community. And I think that brought us a little closer together. Um, and then also just like developments, like there was a brother in the first edition. There was a brother who was running for local city council. And so I interviewed him about his campaign, his ideas, what he wanted to achieve, and took a nice photo and just published that. That was on the front page. And so these kind of stories, just highlighting good things and just spreading good stories and telling each other like what's happening, who's doing, positive things, where we should put our support. And so eventually, that first edition, I was writing everything, but eventually people started to say, "Hey, I want to write something," or a comic artist said, "Hey, I like to make comics. Do you want to put comics in there?" Hey, I like to write about sports. Can I be your sports analyst? And I wasn't making much money in the beginning, but so a lot of people, they just volunteered their time. They just wanted to contribute. So I built a team of 6, 7 young people who wanted to contribute, and eventually I grew the business through ads from local community members. It's something I learned from running a business in the Muslim community, is that a lot of people don't want to spend on advertisements. So that was a tough thing. I'd have to run around and chase Muslim businesses, organizations, nonprofits, restaurants, consultants, different people to place a monthly ad in the newspaper. But eventually it became a good business. And so this was a physical newspaper. So I would distribute it after Jummah in a couple of different masjids in the community. So I was printing about 1,000 newspapers and passing them all out. And eventually, it was a good sustainable business. And then during COVID, I had to stop because the masjids closed. So I couldn't do passing out physical newspapers anymore. And a lot of people would think that physical newspaper is dead and you have to go online, but I found that in my community, a lot of people actually, when I was trying to sell ads, a lot of people preferred the physical newspaper than online. And it might sound wrong, but that's how it was, and I just had to take advantage of the opportunity. So I sold a lot of ads in the newspaper, but then, when I had to stop selling the newspaper, the revenue took a big hit. So I started having to pivot to online, started an email newsletter, and, revamp the website, put articles on there. Currently, I'm trying to get some more people to take a more leading role in the Irving Muslim, because I have some other things going on, and you have to be able to delegate and shift your priorities. So I do have some young people who I'm looking to train to take over the business, and I'm trying to focus more on. I just wrote this book, and alhamdulillah, I want to go further into this space, inshallah.
Inshallah, definitely, bro. So it's interesting how you overcame that challenge. So you realized the physical newspapers obviously was a little difficult to distribute that during COVID. So you went in and essentially decided, okay, let's put a bit more focus online. But it also was faced with another challenge where people and professionals and businesses were more interested in placing ads when it was physical. So it's kind of like a catch-22. So what are you doing now to overcome that? Are you guys kind of slowly transitioning back to physical now that masjids are starting to reopen, or how are you overcoming that challenge?
We're in the process of getting back to physical. Okay. But over this, it's been quite a while now, and online has really, social media has grown. Our outlets on social media has grown. The website is doing better. So I think this has given us time to really bolster our online presence and our website. So I think it's going to be more of like a 50-50 moving forward. And I think that's better because before I was really relying on the revenue from the physical paper, But now I think it's better because it's more sustainable.
Right. Definitely. Well, that's beautiful to hear. And I think that's some really great advice, because you essentially decide, okay, we need to diversify. And, instead of having all of our revenue dependent on physical, now we transition to online, but physical is still important. So let's do half. And that's actually a business lesson right there. So I want to ask you now to go back to the Adventures of Nur-Al-Din and ask you one more question about that. So this book that you wrote, The Adventures of Nur-Al-Din, and the process that you've taken to write this book and to implement Islamic teachings within this book, what was that experience like for you? And I believe this is your first book that you've ever written so far. Is that correct?
Yes.
This is the first one. So can you walk us through what does that journey look like? If someone wanted to write a book, what does that process look like? How did you go through your book writing, and how did you end up publishing this? If you could just give us an idea of what that journey looks like. Yeah, please go ahead.
And I'm gonna start off by saying I think I'm blessed that writing comes easy for me. I don't really have to, like for an article, I would be able to I'd be able to type that up in like a few minutes, and not have to do much editing after. And so similarly with the book, I was able to finish the first draft of the book, which was maybe 95% kept, in like a little over a month. So each day I was writing maybe 10 pages. And the problem with a lot of people is that it's not like super hard to write 10 pages, but it's hard to visualize the whole story and push the story forward and make sure the characters are developed. So I think that like my whole process while writing was I would wake up early in the morning and I made like these breakfast burritos like once a week, so that I would be able to wake up, pop it in the oven and eat it while getting started, so I didn't have to waste time, because I think the early morning is the best time to get started on work. So I would just like type away at my computer for like 4 or 5 hours a day, and just come out with something, some workable content. And so it just, as you're working, as you're writing, you just see the page count just go up and up and up each day, and that's encouraging to see. So the whole process actually took me 5 months to self-publish, and a lot of that was learning the whole process of self-publishing. There's a lot to, I didn't have a publisher, even though I did reach out to some publishers, but I decided that I was going to go self-publishing route because I read a lot of stuff about how it's actually like a lot of authors are actually choosing self-publishing now, because they get, first of all, you get to control the whole marketing process. So with a traditional publisher, you get a small percentage of the sales and they do all the marketing for you. And with self-publishing, you get a higher percentage of sales and marketing is up to you. So I thought, I just graduated with a marketing degree. Why don't I try, learning how to market? Why don't I put my school to marketing a book? So I thought it would be a fun challenge to just, go with the self-publishing route. And so while writing a book, I definitely, if you read it, you'll see like a lot of history, a lot of research. And I did put a lot of research in the beginning. Even just like random small tidbits, I made sure that this is historically accurate, or things like this have happened. And with the Islamic stuff, I had an imam go over my book to make sure that each message and each lesson is Islamically sound. I didn't want to spread, there's so many books out there that are spreading not really good Islamic messages. Like they market themselves as Islamic books, but when you read it, this is kind of iffy, like, oh, I don't know if children should be reading this. So I really wanted to make sure that it was historically accurate and Islamically sound. So I did a lot of research. In the book, you'll see, there's many scenes in Spain, and this was right after the Reconquista in Spain. So I had to recreate an idea of what it was like at that time in Spain. So it took a lot of research. I was reading these through these huge books and these random databases and stuff, trying to find out like, a lot of this content is hidden. It's not easily available. You're not going to find it on Wikipedia or anything. But I think that lent a lot of authenticity to it because it sounds like it's accurate. And then, yeah. And then one more thing is, it's kind of interesting, but I read this book from Stephen King on writing, and it was really helpful for learning, tactics and strategies for writing successfully. And so one thing he said was there's two types of writers: people who plan everything, like to the sentence from the beginning, and then there's people who just start writing and see what happens. And I found that I was number two. I felt like as I was writing, like I was kind of just like watching a movie unfold in front of me, and I was just narrating the movie. So I'm just like, typing away, like I can visualize it very clearly, and I'm just typing away, telling the story, and I think that was really cool and fun for me as I was writing the book. It felt, it was enjoyable. Like even if I didn't make a cent on it, it was a fun project, a fun experience.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and that was a question that I want to ask you, which is, because mashallah, you read some of these books and stories, and it's like with these amazing twists at the end, and it's like, wow, did he plan this? And then they tie the twist at the end to like things that happened in the first chapter, and it's like, wow, and it's so amazing, and it's complicated, and there's a million stories that tie together. And I want to ask you, of course, with this book that you wrote, so this is more of a, it's more of a catered towards young adults, right? So I'm guessing it's simpler in terms of the progression and the way that the story unfolds. But did you still have to map everything out in advance? Did you have to create the structure and the ending in advance and the main events before you wrote, or did you just kind of improvise as you went along?
Yeah, definitely the main things I wanted to make sure that were there, like the main developments. I had a timeline of events that I had, so it wasn't like very strict, but it was just an idea that I would look at to get an idea of what do I want to happen next. And so there was like a timeline of events. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. And sometimes I didn't follow it exactly because I found myself going a different way while writing. But a lot of times, like the major stuff, I did make sure that those were sound because I wanted to make sure the structure was good. I didn't want to like go too far in the impromptu end because then it could turn out like with a wonky structure, and I didn't want that to happen.
So you actually mapped it out a little bit, but you still improvised step by step. Okay. And so I want to ask you this as well in terms of a writer, when it comes to actually, self-publishing, what are some strategies that you can kind of share with us that authors or aspiring authors can refer to to help them market their book or really just distribute their book and get seen and heard and hopefully generate those book sales?
Yeah, I'm still very early in the process. It's been about 10 days since I published. But I think that there's a lot of strategies in your toolbox. And I started off by really leveraging social media. I started off by creating this like piece of copywriting that I would post on all my social medias and really show like a strong reason why this book is worth something, because so many people in the self-publishing space, there's so many people in the self-publishing space publishing books. If you go on Amazon, there's like something like 4 million books or 3 million books, and it's just like there's a lot of content out there, and you really have to differentiate yourself. I think even before you even start writing, you need to think about the marketing. Think about what books are in the space that I want to be in. What is my competition? How many is it flooded with all these people? Like I think on Amazon, like the romance section is the biggest. So if you are someone who wants to be in that space, you have to really find a way to have an edge on your competitors. And marketing starts all the way back there, where you have to see like, how am I going to differentiate myself? So think about how your book is unique. And for me, my book was unique because there was just not a lot of authentic Muslim representation. And the premise itself was interesting about Muslim, pirates in history, which existed in history. So I think that you really have to start off from the beginning with a solid idea and find a way to differentiate yourself. And then later on, when you're fully published, you have to have that social media presence, because I think that's how stuff spreads nowadays. Even WhatsApp, for example, it's very popular with Muslims. So for me, WhatsApp was important. I created this message, and I encouraged people to forward it, and I think it forwarded like in tons of groups. So you have to look at where your customers are for sure. For me, where Muslims are was my goal. On social media, I reached out to some different pages as well. Like we were talking about earlier, influencer marketing is very influential. So I found a few pages and people that I wanted to. I felt that their followers had the same audience that I wanted to reach, and so I reached out to them with a message, seeing if they would help me promote my book, and also reached out to some scholars and imams in the area who supported it. And they told their followers, they spread it on their platforms. So I think you need to start off with a good idea, one that is unique, and one that will capture people's attention, and one that's not in a crowded space. And then as and I'm not a professional, because this is my first book and I'm learning as I go. But so far, what I've learned is do that part, and then you leverage social media and influencer marketing, and go to the places where your audience is.
Mm-hmm. And that's some really good advice. And I think it applies not only to self-publishing, but to any product or business or service that you provide. Really, social media is so huge nowadays. And even in our business program, one of the things that we teach and focus on when our students first start their business is how to get their initial client base on social media, right? Because it's a free platform that's available to you, and there's so many creative ways to use it to grow your business. So appreciate you sharing that, brother. I want to dive into a few questions from the audience, inshallah, if that's okay with you. So a few questions here that we got. One is from our viewers on Facebook. So let's see here. This one is in regards to the apparel business that Badees runs. I'd like to ask, did you speak to potential customers to see if there's a need for the intended brand, and how did the market research take place? So a little question on market research, essentially. How did you determine if this was a business idea worth pursuing?
Yeah, so I did talk a little bit about it, but I'll expand about how I started off with a focus group. I found a group of people in diverse sectors. Like I found a more middle-aged friend, found a really young friend, found someone who's into fashion, found someone who's into different interests. And so with this group of people, I conducted my market research. I had my ideas, and I showed them all my different designs, and I said, help me choose which one do we go forward with. And so I actually got a very resounding agreement on one design, but I also had some other designs that I created later, because people also like that one too. So I would say I started very small with a focus group, but as you get bigger, you can leverage your social media followers to decide what to do next. Mm-hmm. If I have 1,000 followers on Instagram, and I have a few shirt designs out, and then I decide I want to make a new design, then the best thing to do is just go to those people who already like your work and say, hey, what do I make next? And you give them two options, and you tell them vote. I think that's a very strong way to continue to achieve success in your business. Mm-hmm. And just in terms of the need for this in the first place, I would say that it was a personal realization that there was not many shirts for Muslims. And even the ones I did find online through looking, searching keywords online and coming across a couple different businesses, I found that a lot of them were not very appealing to younger people. There were like kind of like antiquated designs and things that didn't really make sense, things that weren't, proper grammar and stuff. Like, I think that American Muslims needed better options. The options out there just weren't so good.
Right.
And apparel is a very crowded space, but in terms of Muslim apparel, you can carve out a space for yourself. And I wouldn't say it's the largest market, but if you really go into it, you can create something for yourself.
Right, definitely. I appreciate you sharing that. There's one more as well. It's really interesting. Two about the book, and I wanna go through them. One of them is: does your personal life or experiences are they part of the ideas that you've used for this book? So did you use some of your personal experiences in those writings?
Yeah, I'll share one thing. I had a shorter book that I wrote first, but I didn't publish it. And I see that one as my practice for writing the book that I published. It taught me a lot about creating stories and building characters. I think I really needed that experience. But in writing that book, I also found that it was very, very personal, because I just left my heart open as I wrote everything. We have all these experiences and memories in our subconscious. And the way I told you that I write is I kind of just like let things flow. So in that first book, it was very personal. And so I also took that as a lesson that, okay, I need to probably be a little less personal. But for my next book, the one that I did publish, it still has a lot of personal stories, but also it's mainly my personal ideas of how I see problems being solved, and how I see flaws in the community and in society, how we can fix those. So it's less of my personal stuff, but more of my personal ideas. And so definitely those ideas are in the book. And I think everybody who writes something, they're not just coming up with like random stuff that they're throwing into the story, but it's coming from their own experiences, their own memories, and their own the things that they see in their daily life. It's like I think all writers are observers of society and observers of their surroundings, and that all that stuff really gets into their work. Just me being raised as a Muslim in America taught me had a lot of experiences that went into this book. And I think any other person who was raised as a Muslim in America or in the West is going to agree with or they're going to feel that some of these experiences or some of these ideas they can relate with. So yeah, definitely just a lot of the ideas that I believe are important, I used to, I really stressed in the book, like unity and, courage and things like that. Like
Things that
unity,
you've seen are important to talk about.
Exactly.
Right.
Because each author has ideas that they want to promote, and it's not like they're trying to indoctrinate people. But obviously, you don't write something just. Some people do, I guess, but you don't write something just for empty entertainment, empty fluff with no direction, no motivation. You write something because you have a worldview that you want to share with others, and so that really comes through in every book and in my book.
Right. That's beautiful, brother. That's really nice to hear. We're going to take one more question from the audience, inshallah. And this one is: if a publisher approaches you for a deal, would you take it or remain as a self-publisher, knowing what you know now and the challenges you faced?
I think that's a very good question. It's something that I'm still doing research on myself. Self-publishing is, it's a new space. One thing I'll say about self-publishing that I was not very happy about was the experience with Amazon itself. They're the biggest self-publisher, and they control like 90% of the market share for selling books and ebooks especially, they control most of the share. But the thing is that I wasn't satisfied with the experience as an author with them, because one problem that I faced was initially you want to be in a specific category for your book, because that's the easiest way to get up the rankings for best-selling status. So the categories that I had chosen for myself didn't show up on the Amazon listing for almost 9 days or almost a week.
Right.
And so I think that hurt me. It didn't hurt me like in a bad way, but it could have, because I could have lost my chance after the initial release is when you have the most clicks and the most purchases on your book. But I could have lost a lot of my ranking if they didn't add those rankings. So I wanted to be in teen young adult books about Islam, teen young adult historical fiction in the Middle East and Africa. So these categories, I was able to still be at number 1, number 2 after a week of not being updated. And I just noticed that other people, when they put their books, they got their rankings immediately. So I don't know what happened, but it was just like an unsatisfying experience, because I still did reach that best-selling status on these categories, alhamdulillah. But I just believe that it was just like there was nobody to talk to. People who I talked to, they just seemed like they didn't know what to do. Right. So it's just like self-publishing. If you were going traditional route, these people are professionals. They know how to do it. They've been doing it for years, and they'll take care of you in these circumstances. So I think there's benefits and pitfalls to both. And I think I just need more research. But if there was a publisher that wanted to work, I would consider their ideas of what to do next. I would just have to really think about it. Yeah.
What they could bring to the table.
Exactly.
I understand. Awesome, brother. Well, honestly, this podcast was nothing short of entertaining and insightful and valuable, because there were so many gems shared. Not only the beautiful stories that we got from your experience with Brother Zabit and Khabib, and also your experience as an author, but as well the entrepreneurship tips, right? Like really being self-motivated and really figuring out your purpose and your passion, and also your drive. That you went and cold messaged and really reached out to people that you respected and admired, and saw how you could potentially, collaborate together for your business. So mashallah, so many lessons that we've learned today. If someone wants to support you, buy the book, or, where do you want to lead people that are listening to this? Where should they go essentially to support your work?
So I have a website, badeesnouiouat.com. Currently building it up and trying to get it more professional, trying to add an email list and things like that. But if you would like to purchase a book and leave a review on Amazon or Goodreads, I think that would be really awesome. I would love to hear your thoughts. So yeah, like the Amazon listing,
Awesome.
we can put it in the comments or something.
Beautiful, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll drop the Amazon link in the description. You guys just go on Amazon and search Adventures of Nur-Al-Din if you're listening to this, and you'll find it available to you. And I think even on my end, last time I checked, it was still listed as like number 1 or something in the category of young adult fiction, religious fiction, so it's Islam-wise. So definitely looks like it's trending right now, which is amazing, mashallah. And I'm super proud for you and so happy to see that people are reading this book, and the reviews so far are all 5-star, and people are just really enjoying what you've written here. So how do you feel reading those reviews, man, and seeing the reaction so far of people reading this?
I think writing a book is like we talked earlier, feels personal, because you're really putting your thoughts and your emotions onto the page. And it's, when I initially published it, I had some family and friends saying, "Oh, it's good," but I didn't believe them.
Right.
But when I started seeing like random people posting their reviews and saying they liked it, it was very I was very grateful for that. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. That's awesome. It's awesome. So inshallah, if you guys are listening to this and you are interested and curious about what this book includes and what exactly unfolds for Farid and his adventures, then go check it out. Amazon Adventures of Nur-Al-Din. We'll drop a link in the comments for his website and for the Amazon book. Brother, Jazakallah khair for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you and really enjoyed our conversation and learning more about your work and what you do. So Jazakallah khair. It was really nice to have you. Well, yakum. And thank you guys for watching as always. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other platform, give us a subscribe and make sure to rate the podcast and let us know how much you enjoy it. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.